I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Swerzik, and today I've got popular guests on the show, competent marksmen and competitors in the engineering division, the assistant director of the department, Joe Thielen, and project engineer, Miles Neville. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Morning, Seth. Thanks for having us.
Competent marksman is a understatement, of course. You guys are obviously competent, but more so, we're in like to make a baseball reference, we're in the quick to it phase of the shooting season. It's spring, so areas where we live and out on the prairie and, upper Midwest and places like that, they're thawed out. You can really start shooting matches, and there's a precision rifle match, I would bet, every weekend.
If not more than one every weekend.
Right, between national level matches, outlaw matches, one-day matches. If you're a competitor, you need to get out there and shoot. Now is the time. And we're kind of just gearing up for that power curve of the entire spring and summer of shooting. And I wanted to get you guys on the show because we've had a lot of interaction with our listeners, about load development and about the loading process. And we've talked about this a bunch of times on the show, but it seems the listeners really want to know not just necessarily broad level what we do and how we do it. They want to know at the individual level, you guys are winners. What do you do to be a winner? And I would say there's two aspects to this. The first aspect is winners win. It's like we joke, Austin Orgain, one of the best shooters in the precision rifle sports. I write press releases when he wins a match and stuff like that. And so it's like, oh yeah, Austin Orgain wins with A-tip bullets. And in reality, you could just end it with Austin Orgain wins with bullets because he's a winner. He's one of the best shooters out there, and he just will flat out shoot you regardless of what he's shooting. So there's always that aspect. You throw in some factory ammo options. I know, Miles, you've shot factory ammo for the NRL Hunter and had podium finishes with factory ammo. But when you're really getting down to it, when you really dive into this sport and you're really trying to compete at the national level, in Joe's case, you're trying to compete at the world level of precision rifle competition, you need to hand load. I think that's inarguable.
Well, and I think the sport has progressed so much that it is hyper competitive that we've talked about, and it is really getting, I would say the pendulum is swinging back to precision, right? Now it is smaller targets and further away because barrels, bullets, optics, all the equipment has progressed and gotten so good, and people have gotten so much better. That's
a big one. The competitor.
We have to make the targets a little smaller now to get separation, on the match day. So
I think thinking back at like some of the target sizes that I used to see, you'd have
absolutely
some, they were far away, but like you'd have 3 and 4 MOA targets on 800,000, 1,200 yard stages back in 2014 or whatever.
Yeah, not anymore.
And, you don't see that anymore.
No, and if you do, it's at a place where the wind is absolutely ferocious. You think like the Hornady PRC in Utah, we always have that one long ball stage. We got the mile target, and the targets leading up to that mile target. Now, the mile is a pretty generous sized target. All the way there, or all the way back, rather, because you start at the mile target, all the way back in, they don't get any easier.
Right? No, absolutely not.
And I think that is super important. I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, factory ammo, man, you can do really good.
Absolutely.
Like Justin Watts down in Oklahoma, he will beat almost everybody in the field using 108 grain ELD match factory Hornady ammo in his 6 Creedmoor. But when you really start diving down and getting things to where 2 impacts can separate you from first to fifth, those little things matter, and that's the consistency you get with hand loading. And when you look at the reasons people hand load, depending on your sport, like, action pistol, let's say, or 3-gun, well, a lot of that is economy. You got to save some money doing that because you're a high volume shooter. And for the hunter or for somebody that's maybe shooting a obsolete cartridge, well, yeah, you have to hand load, or you want to hand load because it's enjoyable, it's cathartic, it's small batch kind of stuff, and there's something to be said for that as well. But when you get into precision rifle sports, you need the volume because we're shooting a lot. However, you have to load for performance. And if you want to wring out the last little bit of accuracy and velocity spread, you have to do it with a hand load. And so that community is still really alive and well as far as reloading for the precision advantage that you get. And it might not be that much bigger when you really look at it. Miles, you might be able to speak to this. When you look at factory ammo, shoot a 20-shot group. I've shot a box of 20 factory ammo, had an SD of I think 13 or 14. This was 6 arc, and it shot 1.7 something at 200 yards for a 20 shot out of a big heavy match gun.
Right.
For factory ammo, I'm not asking for
No,
anything else.
no,
That's
you're going
amazing.
to hit a lot of targets with that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So somebody's buying factory ammo, whether they've got a custom rifle or a factory gun, and factory guns are the same way. But the interaction that you're going to get is going to fall on a bell curve, and that bell curve is wider than if you hand load.
Mhm.
So hand loading allows you to tune the load to, you pick the components that make things happy. Basically, it's a barrel, bullet, powder combination. Those have been the 3 biggest core snobs that I've seen in reloading.
That's your 80%ers.
Right.
Maybe even more.
And just swapping those components out, whether you're swapping from the same load to a new barrel or swap out bullets, swap out powder in the same barrel, that's where you find things that really try to group tight and things that just kind of, throw out, a minute, whatever, minute and a quarter, minute and a half. So there's nothing wrong with any of the components. They can all be top shelf components, but the interaction of the 3 of them together is really what makes a difference. And when you're buying factory ammunition, you don't know, mostly you don't know what the powder is.
Mm-hmm.
And that can vary lot to lot. And so the other problem that you get with buying factory ammunition is the powder can vary lot to lot. Even the powder lot can vary lot to lot in the ammo lots, right? Or not within an ammo lot, but from whatever. You can have exactly the same powder, but different lots of the powder go by
And they perform different.
Right, and the powder lot can change, right? And so what reloading does for you is gives you complete control over all of that. So you can say, I have this 8-pound jug of Varget. This is all the same lot. This is going into this batch of match ammo. And there is no confusion as to what, powder, bullets, cases all go in all the same lot. And that's what really gives you that last little bit of like squeaking out performance.
Yeah, that's the difference of...
It's just consistency.
Yeah, I cleaned the stage, or maybe I dropped one. It couldn't be that little difference where, an SD of factory ammo of 13, 14, 15 maybe. Okay, that's pretty darn good factory ammo. The difference of your 8 or 9 or 10 SD could be that last hit.
Right. And it could be the case, even like I said, with changing powder lot, like it could go from, you can have factory ammo with a 10 or 12 foot per second SD, and then the next lot is 14, 15, right? And so you just have no control over that when you're buying factory ammo.
Make sure and keep in mind that at 400 to 600 yards, that it doesn't.
Doesn't
and that's why an
can't
NRL
shoot.
hunter, I have no qualms whatsoever, because the range is capped at 800. By the time 600 to 800, you kind of start to see a little bit, of those things that hand loading will smooth out, but generally not enough to really make a difference, right? And then the bulk of the targets are inside of 600 yards, and in that realm, there's no reason not to shoot factory.
Well, even in the PRS, Joe, I mean, most of those targets are usually inside of 1,000.
Yep.
And good factory ammo, you can...
It's extremely competitive. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say.
It's just when you hit those stages that are like those KYLs or Prairie Dog, just those ones that are tiny targets, or they get smaller, or they're really far away, and you're shooting a bunch of those, and your SDs catch up with your something like that. I mean, those are the ones. Other than that, good quality factory ammo is hard to beat. I mean, we've all shot it, right?
Right.
I mean, it works well.
It does, yeah. But that's another great point. Those KYL racks, I've fallen victim to this. I know you guys have as well. Where let's say it's 500 yards, and you start off with a 2-minute target, and then it tears down to a minute target or slightly under a minute. And you're just walking it through, I'm centered up. This is great. And then you get to the last one, and you're like, I'm going to send it. I've been pounding the center out of this thing. And that's when you drop one low or high or whatever. So for our listener that really wanted to know on the individual level what you guys do, I want to walk through each of your processes and find out what's different about them and what's the same and similar about them, and walk the listener through what you guys do from the moment you say, okay, I'm shooting, for example, Joe, you have dominated the tactical division in the PRS, and I know you're trying to get on the world scale in the IPRF. It's shooting tactical. Miles, you're an open guy shooting the 6mm arc. So I want to hear what you guys do from, okay, I'm going to load up my tactical ammo. I'm going to load up this 6-arc. Brass, what do you do to the brass? How do you select the primer, the propellants, whatever load workup you do, bullet selection, then the actual process of how your sizing die specifications. Do you do a custom die? Do you not? Do you full length sides, etc.? How you're dropping powder, how you're seating the bullet, what you're measuring afterwards, how do you anneal the brass, how often do you anneal it? I really want to know what your recipe is because it's obviously a winning recipe. And I've said it 100 times, the nut behind the bolt does the work. However, when the nut behind the bolt is tight, you can see the difference between, those small variables, your powder charge, hand-loaded ammo versus factory ammo, etc.
Sure.
So this is going to be detailed and technical so that the listener gets an actual full front door open. You can see right into exactly what you guys do. So to start off, you got to go with your brass. Okay, Joe, you're shooting .308 Winchester. Yep. You're shooting 6-arc. You get how many sticks of brass? Obviously, I'm guessing the same lot of Hornady brass. And then what do you do to that brass to prep it, starting life as a brand new stick of brass?
So, I like to get a minimum of 2,000 to 3,000 pieces of brass.
Whoa. Okay.
So that way, because if you fire that brass 2 or 3 or 4 times, whatever it is, and I know some people fire it longer. And I have fired it longer, but for the sake of time and effort, I'll fire that brass 3 or 4 times, and then I'll get a new batch out because you figure that's a lot of matches, and you're going to wear out that barrel easily within that batch of brass.
Okay, so you're buying enough brass for multiple barrels.
If it's available, right?
Yeah,
but at the very minimum, get enough brass that you can shoot 2, 3, 4 times. That is gonna finish off that barrel. 2,000 to 3,000 rounds. I think the last barrel was 2,000 and something, and you could shoot a .308 a lot longer than that. I get it, but I don't want to have any surprises.
Yeah, you're not in the business of trying to come in second.
No,
right.
So, and with brand new brass, make sure it's the biggest thing I would tell people is try to get one lot of brass.
Okay.
One batch. Then I take that brass and clean it in cob media. Just clean it up. After that, prime it and load it. I don't do any neck turning other than chamfer and trim, IDOD chamfer trim. That's all I do. Prime it and load it.
Okay, so Miles, I'm curious to hear what your process is if it's close to the same.
Brand new brass. I think I grabbed like 1,000 cases of 6-arc when we first, I still have a batch. My match stuff is the original, one of the first lots of 6-arc brass that we ran. But brand new, I chamfer the inside of the neck.
Okay.
And then I load it.
All right. So one point that I was hoping you guys would or wouldn't say so that I could bring this up was something that kind of came from the bench rest and the varminter community, really. Bench rest, varminter, F-class, and that is primer flash hole deburring. Mm-hmm. Do you guys do any of that? Because the Hornady brass, we punch our flash holes, so it's common to have a little burr in there. So there's some other brands that are a little bit more expensive that drill those out so you don't end up with that burr. In my personal experience, I have deburred flash holes and I have not deburred flash holes, and I have seen no measurable difference in velocity, ignition, SD, etc. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about flash hole deburring.
Yeah, I know we've referenced it on the podcast several times, but I did a full regalia neck turn flash hole or primer pocket uniform flash hole deburr, everything to a batch of brass, and then compared it to just virgin out of a box at random, and I couldn't really see anything different. And for what we shoot, for F-class maybe, bench rest maybe you're going on a score ring system, it's a little bit different, but for the plates that we're shooting at for PRS,
it's a hit's a hit.
Whatever effect it may have is small enough. I don't think it's worth doing.
Joe, did you ever do that in your bench rest days?
So I've similar to Miles. I had chambers that dictated that the necks were tighter. I had to turn them.
Okay.
So I had to turn all of that brass, and then going from a tight neck chamber to a standard chamber and shooting the same cartridges, I got away from neck turning because I couldn't make it pay off. Right, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Same thing with primer pocket uniformity. And flash holes, as long as the tooling, I'll obviously look in a bunch of pieces of brass, and if they all look good and clean, the only way you're going to have trouble if you have like a hanging chad or something is not punched out, right, or drilled
Yeah,
out.
if the punch broke while it's coming through.
Yes, that's going to cause you. But as long as if it's got a little flash on the inside, we cannot measure whether it's pressure, velocity in the lab, our rifles.
You just don't see it.
You don't see it. So I quit doing all of that stuff for the sake of time.
Yeah.
And it didn't help me gain any impacts or anything. So
Okay.
no, I don't do that.
So you heard it here, guys. So, but one thing you both said is you give it an inside chamfer, make sure everything's uniform from that regard. And we had Jeff Seward on our show many times, and he did a huge sample test on, I think it was the XM118LR ammo, and it was huge. Like the scale of the test was large, and the inside chamfer before you loaded the bullet made a demonstrable difference on the outcome of dispersion.
Yeah, I would believe that. You want that bullet to
especially
seat uniformly.
Yeah. Especially if we're talking military cases.
Sure.
That's true. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Did you know that Hornady has a full line of reloading tools and equipment? Whether you're brand new to the reloading game or a seasoned veteran, we have tools that will work awesome with your setup. Check out all of Hornady's reloading tools at Hornady.com.
Okay, so you got your virgin brass. It's clean. Inside neck chamfer. Joe, you might do an outside or trim everything uniform. Don't touch the primer pockets. You push the primer in there. Now, for that first firing, are you taking virgin brass to a match, or are you getting it fired beforehand?
As long as it's all the same.
I shoot it in a match.
But I don't. So I have seen 10 to 15 foot per second difference from virgin to first firing.
Absolutely.
And then after first firing onward, no change. But yeah, there is a little bit of a speed boost that I've seen several times now. So I won't mix and match the two in the same match. But if I have a brass, a new batch of brass, yeah, I'll take virgin to a match.
So do you, on your brand new brass, Joe, you mentioned you trim it. What are you trimming it on? I'm guessing our new trimmer where you can get trim, chamfer, and deburr into one, and it's just easier to do it that way?
Yeah, on new brass. I'll just IDOD trim new brass.
Okay, so you won't actually trim the length.
I shouldn't say that. IDOD chamfer new brass.
Okay.
Trimming is later after it grows a little bit. But
Okay.
Yes, and then IDOD chamfer after trim as well.
Okay, so got virgin brass. You're going to take this to a match. You got to get the powder in there. I'd like to hear how you guys select a propellant and then how you're dispensing that propellant.
So
Varget.
Yeah.
yeah.
Easy button. That was easy.
Miles has probably done more monkeying around with powder, if you will, but I am particular about seeding primers. So
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, before we get to the powder, let's
So
talk
I'll
primer.
measure the flash hole depth of that batch, because not all lots or batches of brass have the same primer pocket depth nominally.
Sure.
So I will measure that, and then I'll measure the lot of primers that I have, and all I want to do is make sure that the primer is fully seated in the bottom of the case, whether you're using a handheld priming tool, a bench priming tool, a press to seat them, it doesn't matter. Just I measure the primer pocket depth, I measure the primer, and then I measure the primer depth after it has been seated in the pocket, just to make sure that I'm for sure on the bottom. You do not want to have a primer sitting off the bottom, and then you got to use firing pin energy to seat it and get it to go off.
Oh, okay.
So I just do that as kind of I'm going to call it a safety check, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have a misfire, or doesn't go off, or
Hang fire
I get
crazy.
crazy, or I get variability in my velocities and stuff because my primers aren't seated. So it's the only thing I do with paying
Good
attention
point.
to seating primers.
Do you do anything special to the primers? See them in there.
Hand primer.
So you use the hand priming tool.
Yeah,
Joe, what do you use?
I use that too, just
Okay.
because I use it because it's fast and it over travels. So I make sure and get it, and then you get a good feel, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Okay, so both of you use the hand priming tool. That's interesting. I have long enjoyed priming on the press for whatever reason. I don't know. I feel like I get more sensory feel of how that primer seated and where it's seated to than on the handheld priming tool. But
It's the automatic
Oh.
feed of primers.
yeah, just physically put.
I
one
think
in there
you
to
do,
good.
Seth, because I've seated a ton of them on a press, and I think you do get a really good feel. But I also feel after doing thousands of them with the same tool,
yeah.
I think you get a good feel for Yep, those are all, you can feel them going in the same.
Okay. Now, from a primer standpoint, before we move on to the powder, do you guys have a favorite primer? Is there a go-to, like, okay, I'm shooting match stuff, I want the best, this is what I buy? Now, you're using small rifle, you're using large rifle.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of testing, and it wasn't, the 6-arc didn't seem to be very susceptible to different primers. But we've done other testing with different cartridges, and sometimes it is a little bit more.
So on your arc, you can run a Federal or a CCI or whatever.
Or whatever.
Okay.
And I've not seen, maybe a velocity shift, like one will shift a little faster or slower. But as far as accuracy or spread and velocity, I haven't really noticed that.
Okay.
Not enough to like freak me out. And so, I've just been buying primers where I can get them.
Yeah, Federal 205, CCI 400. You use 450?
I have in the past. Anymore, I try to go for maybe the lightest kick that I can reliably get ignition.
Okay.
Which is tough because like we've got a freezer and we can do cold tests pretty easy in a P&V barrel. So I don't know how to tell the listener how to check that.
Yeah.
But if you get too weak of a primer, especially when you run like small pocket 308 or small pocket Creedmoor size cases, sometimes you can get hang fires. And they may not even be audible hang fires. But
you can see it in the pressure curve.
Right.
Yeah.
We can see it in the pressure and velocity curve. But yeah, I don't know how to tell you to test that at home.
But
yeah.
Good information either way, just to something that they should be cognizant of.
Be aware of. Yeah. If you get ignition failures or hang fires that are audible in cold weather, and you're using a small primer pocket in a fairly large case, that's probably
or a non-magnum primer.
Or a non-magnum,
right.
yes.
That's probably what's going on.
Joe, what do you do for your primer selection?
Right now I'm running a whole batch of Federal 210s.
Yep.
Just the standard 210s. But I've also shot CCI 200s in there and the large in there. Fine. So I like Federal 210s, and in some of the small pocket GT stuff that I've shot, I do like the 450.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
if availability wasn't such an issue, I'd love to do like a lot-to-lot test on primers as well. Because we've seen it with powder, we've seen it. Obviously, you see it with bullets, you see it with cases. But to see what kind of variation you can expect just at random with primers. Ideally, if money was no option, you just get a massive pool of everything and lot Tetris until it all comes together really nice.
Exactly, you would do that.
Yeah, hard to do. So we've got a brand new case. It's primed. The mouth has been chamfered and deburred inside, outside. We're all pretty well in agreement there. We don't touch the primer pockets really. We do, Joe, doing some measuring in there, but not actually correcting anything with a uniformer or flash hole deburring. Now we're circling back to propellant. There's a lot of tribal knowledge, in my opinion, in powder selection. Like there's just some defaults that you just know as you participate in these sports. You just, this is what I use. But I'd like to hear from you guys how you select a powder and then how you dispense that propellant.
Okay. Yeah, I look at Hodgdon Extreme line is really good. The newer Reloader series are pretty temp stable. I'm aiming to get temp stable powders from the get go if I can, if they'll work. And then the new
they're Winchesters.
Winchester Stay-Ball Match and Stay-Ball HD.
Yep.
If any of those three families of powders will work, those are good starting points because the temp stability on those is top of the line. And like I said, then you look in your reloading manual or online or wherever you can find reputable reloading information.
Not sniper side.
Keyword reputable.
Yes. And then find what's applicable for the velocity range you're trying to get out of the cartridge, right? Because sometimes Stay-Ball HD ain't going to work in an arc, right? It's too slow, right? So 4350 is not going to work in a 6-arc. It's too slow. So you get cornered into what's available and then start from there. If those don't work, then there's other higher energy options that are a little more temp sensitive, but then you can start looking at like Lever Evolution, CFE223.
Yeah,
not afraid to use them. It's an extra step for match shooting where I have to track temps throughout the
Joe, I'm guessing the similar for you. Temp stability important because we've shot matches in Nebraska. People going home in ambulances. It's cold and snowy and raining and whatever. And then we've all shot matches where it hits triple digits. So it's important to have temperature stability. What's your criteria for propellants in your match load?
Yeah, number one is precision, right? accuracy is paramount, and consistency is a very, very close second. And by consistency, it is velocity spreads and changes in velocity with temperature.
Okay.
So I follow the same thing Miles is doing. And
Yep.
Hodgdon, that's my go-to. If it works there, I'm probably going to use it.
Yeah. What are you running in your tactical load right now?
Varget and 4895.
Classic. H4895 and Varget. For a through 8 Winchester doesn't get a whole lot better than that. And Miles, in your open 6 arc, I'm still running Varget.
Yeah. And that's I guess the back end, what he hit was very important as well, is that you test them and then it has to perform, right? So I'm looking for 20 shot strings under 3/4 MOA.
Mm-hmm.
And closer to a half MOA is pretty nice too. Like
Yeah.
if you can edge in on that, I think that's about as good as you're going to get for magazine fed ammo that you're not babying.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So dispensing propellant is right next to cartridge case trimming in things that I dislike about reloading. Doing 20s, no problem. 40, even 50, where you got them in the tray or whatever. Oh, man.
300
it starts to suck. Now, a really big advantage that I've personally done is stay ball match, which is a comparable Varget speed or similar Varget speed. I've used that in a bunch of cartridge cases because I can dispense it straight from the powder measure, and it measures meters like hot butter. You guys with the extruded propellant, a little bit different. So how are you guys getting powder into the case?
I personally, I weigh all of mine.
Individually
I
weighed?
weigh them all.
Okay.
Yep.
I throw them out of a thrower and then set it on a scale and then have a window that's acceptable. And
What is your window on yours with your arc? I mean, are you that
like a 3/10 window?
Yeah, so you're not down to the kernel.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you've tested that
Right.
for the listener. You've tested hand weight charges to the kernel, and then you've tested them thrown from the powder measure. And the powder measure on a stick powder gives you half a grain.
I would say if I sit there and load 500 rounds of arc or something out of a thrower, I think I'll see on the extreme ends probably 8/10, 9/10 of a grain worth of variation on that. Most of it falls. I would say 80% of them fall within that 3/10 window.
Wow.
So it's not very often that I'm chucking them back, but those ones that do get crazy, those you can see those when those happen. Like I've seen it at matches. I've been like, oh, it's fine. They just you weigh like 10 of them and they're all the same. Like, oh, we're good. And then you go to a match and you
Nope, not good.
yeah.
So one little trick for, I don't know if this is how you do it, Miles, but a little trick that I'd been using for years, hand trickle the powder charge that you want on there, set that on your scale, and hit the 0 button. Now your scale reads 0 with the perfect charge, and if your tolerance is 3/10, I'm looking for, a grain and a half either way. I can dispense the powder, set it down, and if it says more than 0.15, I know I throw that charge back in the hopper.
Yeah. The other cool thing that you can do with throwers when you're adjusting the thrower is I'll throw 10 charges and then look for 280 grains.
Oh.
And so when you get 10 of them, it gets enough of them that the charge-to-charge variation kind of goes into the noise. And then your average is actually really close to your average.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
Because you can chase it around like a 10th or 2 per charge and like, oh, I need more. Oh, I need less. Oh, I need more, and sit there and play that game forever.
Adjusting a powder measure is just like shooting a 20 or 30 shot sample.
Right.
If you shoot a 3-shot sample, you're not getting the full idea of your cone dispersion. If you throw one charge and then make an adjustment, you have no.
You're up, down, up, down, up, down.
Yeah.
All right. What scale are you guys using?
The new Hornady, the precision one is actually pretty solid.
The high end scale.
Yep. Precision lab scale. Excellent. We've all used, and we've got them a bunch in the factory, the FX120Is, and we've got some other Haas and some other really, really high-end scales that we use for various things throughout our entire company in various levels of production. But that lab scale has been pretty darn handy for us as competitors.
It's solid. Absolutely.
So from the measure right on there, Joe, you're trickling on the side. Miles, if it's not in my tolerance, I just throw it back and start over.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess back to our point, it does matter. If you go to the kernel, dispersion is slightly better. SD might be like 1 foot per second better, 1 or 2 foot per second better.
Okay.
I just determined that for what I'm doing is good enough.
Yeah, and I think we should have made that more abundantly clear at the beginning that this is not the loading procedure that you guys would use, say, for F class or for bench rest if you're still in that business. this is for the precision rifle sports, the games, the PRS, the NRL Hunter.
Yep. Yeah. If I was going to go out to a prairie dog town, spend all day out there. I'm not weighing 500 rounds to the colonel.
Hornady Security Mobilus Safes. Discover the ultimate solution for safeguarding your valuable equipment with Hornady Security Mobilus Safes. Offering an innovative modular design, Mobilus safes can be easily transported and assembled piece by piece in any room. Featuring a full square lock interior organizing system that maximizes storage space with countless storage configurations. Elevate your security with Mobilus safes from Hornady Security.
Next up, bullets. Now, bullet selection is pretty easy for us in this sport because it's like, we have the A-tip that is inarguably the best match bullet ever made. Like, we're going to use the A-tip, but Joe, I know you've dabbled. Miles, I know you've dabbled in some others. What are you looking for out of a bullet outside of, okay, there's some generic, I just want it to be the heaviest bullet because it's going to have the best drag.
So personally, I love to, it's one thing that I enjoy that the competitive shooting allows me to do. I love shooting new lots, different bullets, new bullets out in the field competitively and seeing how they work, right? And that way, if somebody asks me, I have real world knowledge of what I loaded, how I did it, and did it work? Did it not work as well as the other ones? What trade-offs, So I love shooting, and I'll do that through, I think, Miles, you do the same thing. And when it comes to bullets, I just want them all to be the same lot of the same bullet, right? But I might shoot VTs, I might shoot A-tips, I might shoot a brand new lot with running on the press right now that we just made, tune it up and shoot it because I enjoy to do that. And I think that's a service for our customer, right? You can tell them like, hey, I shot lot number, 225, 1500, whatever. And it shot really good in this system that I was running. So you might want to try it.
Yep. I like it. Yeah, that is. And that's part of why our product innovation, we always get all these accolades and sometimes they're underhanded where it's like, it was just, the Hornady marketing machine with new products. Well, we innovate the new products because we're using them. And we like to use them.
Yeah. And we want to help our customers,
exactly.
right? I mean, that's the end goal is to be like, hey, Seth, this recipe worked. And I have no problem sharing everything that I have there to help you have more fun.
Right.
So,
yeah, the changes are a lot of times very small, right? Small improvements, but they are incrementally.
They are
improving.
improvements. Yeah.
So it's like, can you kill everything in North America with a 30-06 with a lead nose spire point? Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have to?
No, you don't have to.
But when you sit down and crunch the numbers, and you get into like 6.5 PRC with a 143 LDX, you got better ballistics, right?
Yep.
And it's not night and day. You can't even use a 30-06 anymore. But incrementally, yes, that's a better solution. Hit probability is higher. Terminal performance is better. It's like.
It's better.
It's better.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Like shooting it. So right now, to answer your question, I'm shooting 176 A-tips out of the 308. And that's just a lethal combination. It just works so well.
Yeah. And Miles shooting the 110.
I got a couple lots of 110s and 109 ELDMs that I will bounce back and forth between. And I've played around with the 80 ELD VTs. I haven't taken them to a match yet, but I probably should.
I bet they shoot. I bet there's no recoil with those.
Yeah. When I was running gas gun, I almost took them to the finale. They were brand new product at that point, and I just because I refused to change things up right before the big match, I didn't do it. But I was shooting them out of my gas gun, my match gas gun, to get the drag data for the Ford-off profile.
And so you had them.
Was punishing the 1,250-yard target with them. So.
Oh man, that would be super low recoil, and for the bulk of the targets,
right?
Those inside a half a mile.
Yeah, and it's funny with the 6 arc when you get the lighter bullet weights in it, it feels like the gun's broken.
Joe, that's awesome shooting the 176 A-tip. Now you have one also with the 174 ELD VT bullet, and I feel like this is related but kind of a tangent. The ELD VT line gets touted a lot for varmint use because that's the V in VT. It is for varmint use. That 174, there's very little varmint application there. That was built for tactical shooters and PRS.
Yes,
because it fits within the weight restrictions.
Weight, magazine length, everything. And it works extremely. I still have some bullets left that I plan on shooting here at some point. I just happen to be, right now I'm shooting a new lot of 160 or 176s that were produced last year because I wanted to. I want to test them and make sure everything is just
so you
where it needs
guys,
to be.
you get bullets enough to shoot a barrel's worth, I'm guessing, of the same lot, and you're just looking for mainly raw drag and dispersion. How do they perform out of your rifle? Big question here is, what do you guys do for seating depth? Because that question is often, okay, I'm going to jump them 5. And, they didn't shoot at 5, but now I'm jumping them 10, and now everything's right in the world, so I'm jumping them 10. And do they fit in the magazine? Are you concerned with your overall length? Are you measuring your jump to the rifling? And if so, what is that? And what have you found? And what do you guys do in that regard?
I think with the SAMI ARC chamber, which is what I have, just a SAMI reamer for all my barrels, the 110s and 109s, you touch the rifling somewhere around 2.37, 2.38, somewhere in there. So I seat them to 2.35.
Okay, 20.
You're jumping them 20?
20 to 30.
Yep.
And then I forget that the die is adjustable. It's probably rusted in place by now.
Okay.
So I'm a similar, I start very similar to that, where I'll be 20 off. But I know from, when you say tribal knowledge earlier, I know from just shooting thousands and thousands of bullets that Hornady ELD match, most all the A-tips, ELDXs, you can jump those things a country mile and they shoot just.
They're very tolerant.
They're very, very tolerant. The 176s, I do have to get those a little bit closer. I'm about that 20 off.
Okay.
To get them to shoot really good. They have a very aggressive secant. We wrung everything we could out of that. So they're pretty aggressive secant. So they shoot a little bit better closer. The 174 VTs, jump those babies 60,000s.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt a darn thing. So when I shot 110s, 153s, 138s, you can jump those things. I tell people, like, you want to jump those things 40 to 60,000. 80 won't hurt you. 100 doesn't hurt you. So,
Miles, you've tested that with our bullets anyway.
Right.
What were your findings on jump sensitivity?
Yeah, the main ones I've done were the 110, 109 and 6mm, and then 6.5, 140s and 135 A-tips, 140 ELDM and 135 A-tip. And the results showed difference. There was a trend that maybe it was better, but it was within the test-to-test noise.
Oh, wow. So it would take a considerably larger sample.
Yeah. And that was in 2 barrels, right? So those two, that's what happened in those 2 barrels. I've seen enough barrel to barrel variation now as far as dispersion and SD and everything goes, that if you told me that your system required you to jump in a tighter window and then things fall apart, I'll believe you. You know?
But and like I said, our ogive profiles are our ogive profiles, and we've tested them in chambers that we designed. You know, Joe, you're not running a SAMI 300 or a 308 Winchester reamer.
Correct.
And the Creedmoor and the ARC reamers that you tested, Miles, that the way that throat geometry is laid out, they're jump tolerant just based on the throat geometry.
Yeah. And then anecdotally, for everything I've done for match use, for my own personal use, like I said, I set it at 20 to 35 thousandths jump. Forget that it exists, and I see bigger swings from changing powder by far, or changing powder charge even than what I've ever seen from adjusting seating depth. So I guess, it either performs or it doesn't with the powder that I select, the powder and the bullet I select, and I will cycle through powders and bullets until it meets my standards for accuracy. And I've never really messed with seating depth. I mean, I have in the past, and but that was back when I was doing 5-shot ladder tests on everything. And
insignificant. What is that, confirmation file bias funnels?
Yeah.
All right, so really not a large concern for overall length. A big concern is that it fits in your magazine because you got to run these.
So and that was for gas gun, I was jumping them 120 thousandths because I had to.
Yeah, that's an eighth of an inch.
Right.
Yeah.
And that gun pounded.
Yeah.
That gas gun shot well for a rifle, not just a gas operated rifle. So you heard it here. You can jump them. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of jump.
Yeah. So one thing that I think that I think would help our listeners is historically, because obviously we shoot a lot of bullets here, no matter what color box they are for testing, right? If you're shooting, let's just say 105s or 109s, and your chamber's set up to shoot those, normally your free bore is going to be shorter to make those bullets shoot really well and work well. Now you go grab 110s and try to put them in there, or 108s or 109s or whatever, and you're like, man, these things don't shoot very good. I'm done with those. I don't know how many people that I've talked to, I'm like, you can't expect that, 100,000th throat to now work with a bullet that was never designed to work in 100,000th throat, and you stuff it way in there. So
Yeah, you're
I want our listeners to hear,
yeah.
yes, if you're going to shoot the Hornady bullets, make sure, or at least ask your gunsmith or whatever, how much free bore you have in your reamer, and shoot the SAMI. If you're shooting a SAMI cartridge, use the SAMI spec throat in there, and it'll help you. Or if you're shooting something custom, you may need to lengthen your free bore to really get our bullets to sing.
Yeah,
So,
because they need a little bit of jump.
They want some breathing room.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a trend, I guess, that I have seen, is when you stuff a bullet all the way to the start of the ogive at the case mouth, you get really inconsistent. You have the potential to get some really wild, inconsistent results.
And same things, if you're stuffing them right up in the throat,
right?
And your barrel heat and dirty and everything, it's like a knife edge, and if you fall off that thing, you might be in trouble.
Yeah, if you're running a 5 thou jam and every single time it's exactly a 5 thou jam, then it's probably going to be happy.
Yes.
But if it's 5, then 7, then 3.
Then off, and then in. Yeah.
And then you build up fouling from a clean barrel. And yeah.
So, again, that's all great stuff, and hopefully the listener doesn't think of it as a cavalier approach to bullet jump, but it's got to fit in the magazine first and foremost.
Yep.
And then we're running, if it's a Hornady design chamber, standard SAMI chamber reamers, and then Joe on your 308, okay, I know what bullet I'm going to shoot. I'm going to set this thing up to have the jump I need and still fit in the magazine.
Absolutely.
All right. So as far as seating goes, it's as simple as use a Hornady seating die. I feel like our seating dies are some of the best kept secrets in the reloading community. People pay all this extra money to get these air quote match dies so that there's an alignment collar. And the standard custom grade die from Hornady has a floating alignment collar that's going to line that case up with the bullet before the seating starts.
Yep.
What are you guys using for dies for the seating die?
Just the Hornady. Make sure your stem matches your bullet profile.
That's exactly what
the Hornady.
Standard seating die. They work great.
Yeah.
I love the micrometer click, though. I do have to say that.
Yeah, the
I
click adjust
love the
micrometer.
I love that. So I like that. But yeah, other than that, use a standard die. I use standard full-length size dies. Full-length size, when it comes to, I should say shooting in general, I full-length resize everything.
All right, let's transition then. So we've got through raw virgin brass. It's primed. We get the powder in there. You seat the bullet. You go win the match. Great. Okay, now we've got fired brass.
Mm-hmm.
So now the back half of this here, let's walk through your fired brass procedure, because I think that is the more realistic thing that the listener is going to be after. Is, it's great to have, clean, shiny virgin brass. Well, now it's dirty. You've been kicking around in the dirt. How do I get it there? So let's start with cleaning, trimming.
Cleaning and prep, basically.
Yeah, cleaning, prep, trimming. Do you guys anneal? And then, we're going to talk about sizing. So you get your dirty brass. I keep mine in the old Crown Royal bag, or now the Hornady the Hornady bag at the match. Got the drawstring in there. You bring home your match brass. What do you guys do to clean?
I lay it on a rag and I spray it with one shot, and then I full-length resize it.
Nay. No, you do not.
I do. If I wear out a die, I'll buy a new one.
Wow. Miles. Bold statement. Well, and that is a little bit of a cavalier attitude, because we work here, obviously. So if there's something that's impregnated in the brass or whatever, and you
I don't know how many dies I have thousands and thousands of rounds on.
No problem.
I've never hurt one.
Okay, that's a bold statement. Did not expect to hear that from you. So you just spray it down,
unless it falls into mud or something.
Yeah,
But you're saying on a generally, it might be some dust or whatever, but you're not. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Okay, you size it right off the bat. No cleaning. Joe, what do you do for clean brass?
Bring it in, dump it in a tumbler, shine it up again, clean it.
Media tumbler, like corn cob.
Corn cob. Yep. Clean it up. Do exactly what Miles just said. Lay it down on rags, spray it with one shot, and full-length size it.
Okay.
Try to bump the shoulder, I don't know, 1 to 3 thousandths is what I'm shooting for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I started a thou and then close the bolt until it drops, I guess, without having to
feel it.
push the headspace down.
Nobody using stainless steel pins.
Yeah.
for cleaning brass?
Yeah. After I size it, I gotta get the lube off.
Oh, Miles is really throwing a loop. Okay, so you clean after you size. All right. So from there, you've got.
And I only got to do it once.
All right. So you clean, media tumbler, corn cob, spray it down. Now you both go to sizing. Now we talked about your shoulder bump. Are you guys using custom grade new dimension or are you using match grade dies?
I use the
Standard.
Standard die. So the match grade die from Hornady allows you interchangeable neck bushings.
Yeah.
So you guys are using a standard Sammy spec die.
Yeah. Yep. Sammy, if you use Sammy Reamer standard dies, then there's no
expand. I run.
I've done it. I mean,
I've
played around wildcatting before, and whatever. But
I've used a ton of bushing dies. They work great.
Yeah, of course.
If you need to use them and they work for you,
when you were neck turning,
absolutely use bushing dies. They work great. This is just a.
You don't have to.
No, our side, the neck size works, thickness, everything works out good for this car, and it works great. So I mean, it's easy. So I use it.
What I love about this is there are die sets that are hundreds of dollars per set, and they do no better or worse job than our $65 set. That's pretty cool.
I'm going to tell you that our dies, polish and finish and hardness and everything, they're good. Our dies. We build a really good die. I mean, we really do.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's not something worth getting worked up over, especially for the kind of shooting that we're doing. Like I said, there may be some application where, like, if you're trying to eke out, consistent 5 foot per second SDs,
or you're in the short range bench rest world where everything has to fit to and you're trying to shoot, in the zeros or the low ones. I mean, that's a different. I'm sure we're going to get questions on that.
Different skill set.
I would do things differently then.
Yeah. But for field shooting, hunting, PRS, that kind of stuff.
Are you guys using headspace comparators for measuring your headspace?
That's what
I do. Okay.
Yep. And then I do what Miles does, and I think the listener should do this as well. Take your rifle and put those sized cases in there and feel your bolt. Take a fired case that you haven't sized yet, put it in there, feel your bolt, and then take one you've sized, and you'll feel the difference. And you want that bolt to just, I want my bolt to just close. Yes.
Butter smooth. Okay, so.
And then like every once I get starting off with a new batch of cases or whatever, new barrel, whatever, I'll check like every 20 cases for the first 100 that I do, just to make sure that it's consistently doing that. Because what'll happen is, like, your first one that you do when you're setting up the die, when you hit it once, okay, it's still long. Well, you hit it again, now it gets to the number. Well, you take the next one and you hit it all just once, it won't do as much
you gotta
work.
Bump
right?
it down a little bit.
Yep. I generally recommend to everybody don't size the same piece of brass when you're adjusting your die.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
And then after you're done, maybe take set those aside and run them back through or whatever.
Yep.
But
Redefining varmint hunting and target shooting. The Hornady ELD VT. ELD VT bullets feature the heat shield tip, which resists the effects of aerodynamic heating. The lead core has been moved rearward, producing enhanced in-flight stability. AMP bullet jackets are used to ensure every ELD VT bullet performs at its peak potential. The dual-purpose bullet for varmint and target shooting. ELD VT bullets from Hornady.
All right, so at this point, we come out of the sizing die. You've got dirty brass. You've got clean brass. You take your sized brass, then you throw it in your stainless steel media tumbler.
Right.
Comes out looking like a mirror. And now, let's talk trimming, because that's kind of the next step.
Yep.
Obviously, we have a really awesome trimmer right now. That really beats the old school ways of doing it. Is that what you guys are using? Obviously, we've had this thing internally now for a long time.
Yeah. Yep. Three-way trimmer is the way to go.
That is the only way to go.
Yeah, when you're doing
for the
this
volume.
volume.
Yeah. But I don't trim every time. There's no reason.
Usually I trim after the first firing, and that lasts the lifetime of the brass. I mean, I might end up doing it again later, but not often.
Make sure that we clarify though you need to measure your cases after you have full length sized them for length, and then compare that to your minimum chamber, and make sure that you don't have interference. If you're trying not to trim every time, but make sure you don't have interference with the mouth of that chamber with your full length size case, because they do grow.
Right. I want you guys to explain that to the listener, that you're squeezing the brass down into essentially a chamber that's smaller than the brass, and why you need to measure it after you size it.
Blow it out, and then you squeeze it back in, shoots up the
Yeah,
die.
the material has
That
nowhere else to
the
go.
material has to go somewhere, and you expand it out in your
So, yeah,
chamber, and when you
basi-
squeeze it, it grows
Right.
in length.
When you expand it out, I guess it thins the material, and then when you squeeze it back in, it doesn't thicken it
No.
back. It runs
It
up.
gets longer.
Okay, and then also when you are measuring your headspace, another important note, that expander is going to pull your headspace out a little bit, or it can, depending on how you lube
Yeah.
the inside of your neck. So
Right.
yeah,
And that's
keep
so
mindful
that's
of that.
a key point when like that's why I like one shot, I guess, is because you can lay the cases all facing you
Mouth, you spray
and
them
you get
mouth towards you.
into
Yeah,
the
you too.
mouth of the case.
I
And
do
I'll
the same
even
thing.
I spray them, roll them
One.
half away over, and
Yep.
then spray them again.
That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
Mouth to me or something. So yep.
All right, so now we've got a trim chamfer, deburr. Everything's nice. It's uniform. It's the same length, and now we're right back to the beginning where you got your primer. You've already
Yep.
measured your stuff. You're good to go. You're dispensing the propellant, and it's rinse and repeat. Now, the last iteration of this, though, is annealing, and that's something that I know some people years ago, it was way more arduous because, there was like the socket you put in the drill and you put the torch on there with Tempelac, and it took you forever to do 50 sticks of brass. Well, now there's several products on the market that make it way easier. And then obviously we have a brass making facility. So if we needed to, anneal 500 sticks of brass, we could get it done. But the listeners definitely want to know, there are some people that they anneal because they paid the money to buy an annealer. They anneal every single time. And I know we talked about this also in previous episodes, but I want to hear your thoughts on annealing and what that does to consistency and brass life and how often you do it.
It's mostly a brass life driver. From virgin cases to once fired cases to annealed once fired or annealed third fired SDs, you're not really going to see very much variation in that. Like, it's unless you're getting crazy scientific with it. But from any of those, the velocity variation that you get from neck hardness, you're not really going to see it. But once you start getting 4, 5, 6, 7 firings on a case, you're going to start seeing. You can feel it when you see the bullets.
Yep.
Like you chunk when because the neck gets hardened. And then if you get more than 7 or 8 or 9 firing, I don't think you will. I think 7.
I think you'll split. Yeah, that's kind of my line is 5 to 7
Yeah.
is like max. If you're going to shoot your brass longer than 5 to 7 times, you should anneal it.
Okay, so you guys don't sound like actually you have, but
Yeah,
for the most part, not annealing very often.
I do. Well, we have the annealing made perfect thing in the lab, and so depending on how I feel, I'll do it anywhere from every firing to every third.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe.
I'm every third or fourth.
Okay, and going back to our previous episode, Joe, coming from your past life in bench rest, you thought there was a sweet spot where you anneal it, you get a firing on it, but that third firing
yes.
after annealing,
And
that
I would still say that.
Okay.
Same way with virgin brass versus fired once or twice.
Mhm.
It is like, it just works really, really well.
It's just that's it in its power curve right there.
And back then when I was turning and putting all the energy into prepping all those cases, I literally would try to keep brass as long as I could. So I would anneal it every third or fourth firing I remember I had 15 to 20 firings on a piece of brass.
Whoa.
Because you weren't bumping it, you weren't growing,
Yeah.
you were at all your dimensions, right? So it
Yep.
wasn't going to separate on you in the head, and they would last that long. And I simply did that because I didn't want to have to neck turn a whole
my gosh.
nother batch of brass.
That's right. And that's actually a good point. One thing that we didn't bring up earlier was the fact that nobody is really neck sizing anymore. Going back to your bench rest days, did you neck size then? And then why is that process kind of grown out of favor, do you think, in the precision rifle sports?
I did not neck size then.
Okay.
And here's my experience with neck sizing, and I'd love to hear Miles as well, but I tried it both ways. I could never get the level of consistency from a velocity, spread, accuracy, consistency, everything when I neck sized only.
Okay.
Because I found them to vary a little bit when I would close the bolt on my gun, whether snug to loose, and I just couldn't get the consistency.
I only ever played with neck sizing very briefly when I first started reloading, and for me, I quit doing it because of reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Just you'd get to a point where you can't chamber around,
Then you have to full length size it anyway.
and I got tired of getting to that point.
Yep.
I know people do it and they
Yeah.
have success, and if it works, great.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it work very well. So
Okay. And if you are again, Joe, you're trying to make it into the world level of precision rifle shooting. You and several other tactical shooters are really close in your level of performance. You get on a stage and you have some rounds that don't chamber. Oh, that's a problem.
That's a major problem.
Yeah, that's a malfunction you can't afford to have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The gear working is more important than that much on your dispersion.
Then 50,000 on dispersion. Yeah.
I neck sized very briefly as well. Sheer convenience. That was it. The only reason I neck sized was I don't have to lube these whole cases and bump the shoulder and get the lube off. I could just dip the mouth in graphite and send it.
Yep.
And that was a huge convenience thing. But I did that for a very short time because I hit the wall where, man, these don't feel the same when I'm closing the bolt. And then, I'm not going to force this bolt home because that's really not wanting to go. Like, okay, what am I even doing here? And that was, again, really, really early on in my career, and I've avoided it since then for the reliability aspect of it.
Yes. Yeah, I guess maybe something to do sometime, but I've never actually sat down and tested it to see if there's any benefit or not. But, there's
a time saver benefit. That was important to me.
Yeah.
I don't clean primer pockets.
That was okay. That was going to be one of my other things.
I was just going through what else I do. I don't clean primer pockets. I don't do anything to the flash holes, just like that.
Yep.
I seat the primer in there the same way. Oh, when I get done sizing, because Miles and I do it different. We probably should clarify that. Miles cleans his brass post full length sizing with his cleaner, and he gets them clean. My brass is already clean. I cut out my die, and I just put them on a pile on a rag, and I just lay them out, flip a rag over, and essentially wipe them off with some clean rags to get the little bit of one shot off. And then after that, it's primed I prime it and charge it and seat it.
That's good to go.
Yep.
Awesome. And the one shot doesn't contaminate powder or primer. So that's awesome. And I feel like your process, walking through the slight differences for the competitor that maybe is just getting into hand loading, and there's all these different techniques, and it's easy to get lost in the, oh my gosh, I have to do all of these processes. You have to find the processes that work for you, that give you a benefit, that are worth your time, and actually give you a demonstrable difference on the precision of your system. And you guys have found what works, and it really doesn't involve a whole lot of smoke and mirrors and different, all kinds of crazy, wait till Saturn blocks Jupiter so you can, deburr the flash hole, like some of those old school bench press techniques. For this sport, yes, you're shooting incredibly high levels of precision, but you don't have to get super crazy with your loading techniques.
No.
This is generally straightforward loading.
Use top of the line components and tools.
Of course.
And pay it. I was told a long time ago, and it's paid me dividends. Pay attention to the things that really matter and do those really well, and kind of forget all the other stuff that really doesn't give you a bang for your buck.
Yeah.
This is exactly related to miles, barrels, powder, bullets. Those are the three knobs I'm going to turn, because if I turn one of these three knobs, something major is going to happen. Now,
Absolutely.
if I tweak my seating depth 0.010 of an inch, or if I trickle 0.2 of a grain more powder and I hold everything to a 1/10 or a 100th tolerance, okay, those don't make anything sizable change.
Right.
Like were those three big knobs, and it's like that. You're going to focus on the simple procedures that we know are necessary. We're going to do those correctly, and you're going to end up with a winning load.
And I think
you can do 60% of the work and get 95% of the outcome.
Yeah, or more, more than 95.
Yep.
I think another thing that, well, at least I do that. I think Miles does the same thing that I think our listeners would benefit from is, and it's related to reloading, but it's the loading part for my system. So I'm developing my load, right, for this barrel or barrels or whatever. I'll get a seating depth and a charge weight that shoots really, really good. And then I will go up and down from that charge weight, leaving my seating depth the same and watching my dispersion pattern. Because I want to go to a match where it's 40 degrees or it's 80 degrees, or it's my barrel's fouled or my barrel's clean, or it's got the next second day and it's 150 rounds on it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make sure your system will still work. And Miles touched on it before. It has to get you through a whole weekend. It can't last you 4 hours or one day. You got to get through a whole weekend. So I will develop that load, and then I will actually load. I'm hoping I get a flat spot, right? So I'm hoping 43 grains of powder works, or whatever the number is. And then I want to go 43.2 or 3 and 40
2.7. Yep.
Yes, and I want it to be, yes, my velocity will vary a little bit within there, but I want it to shoot really, really good at both of those windows and everywhere in between. That way I can load in the middle there and be covered from cold to warm, dirty to fouled to clean, everything. So
yeah, and the trend, this is kind of anecdotal and don't take it as gospel, but the trend that I see in P&V barrels when we do temperature tests is that very closely increasing the powder charge, increasing the pressure replicates kind of the shape of the curve very closely to what happens with powder sensitive or temperature sensitive powders when you go hot.
Okay.
So like what you're doing where you artificially increase the pressure, it tends to perform very similarly to how it will perform
when it's
hot, and vice versa when it's cold. And I guess to circle back on why I right off the gate pick powders that are temp stable, it's because the behavior of dispersion and even velocity spreads with sensitive powders can bump you to some crazy stuff. Like a lot of the double base ball powders, right?
Oh yeah.
You get hot and your velocity skyrockets and your dispersion gets like,
it opens up on you.
Yeah, shotgun pattern style.
And I want to make
real
sure
wild
if we
on
got inclement weather, it's moisture, rain. I want to make sure my gun's going to run,
Yeah, that's what I usually run. The Book Max is as high as I'll ever run.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And even then, I found a lot of good accuracy not at Book Max.
Yeah,
just
drop
just
a grain,
bit.
dump a grain off Book Max, and things work better.
And then if I see when I'm developing my load, one thing that'll help, if I see any, like I call them zippers or vertical, but if your shots are stringing and most of it is straight up and down, you either have a stock barrel bedding something problem or your load is just not going to work. Yes.
Yeah, it's not happy.
Change your powder charge. You just change something, change one of the big knobs and see if you can get it to come in. And then the other thing that I really like to do when I'm hand loading is I like to shoot at a distance, pick it 100 yards, 200 yards, 600 yards, whatever, and shoot multiple 5-shot, 7-shot, 8-shot, 10-shot, whatever you're going to do until I have a stack of shots down there that is 15 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
And that has paid me more dividends over the long haul on getting more impacts in making sure that my system is going to do this on this stage, that stage, and tomorrow's stage as well.
Yep. And I think that it really ties into the holistic approach to another reason that people hand load. One of the reasons I still hand load for hunts is it's not so much on the hunting side. I still do it for this reason on the hunt, but for you guys competing at the highest level is very similar to, I think everybody in the world mostly in the listening has played baseball. It's very related to hitting the baseball when you get into, not just, little league and whatever. When you're in playing competitive baseball as you get older, hitting the baseball is more mental than anything else. You can overthink yourself in the the box. And if you just trust what you're doing, trust that you know how to have a good at bat and hit the baseball, you're going to have more hits on the baseball. And when you go into a precision rifle sport, knowing that you hand loaded your ammo, that it is absolutely dialed in, when you go up on that stage, you're not overthinking the gun and the bullet and the jump and I'm chasing the rifling, should I have moved that seating die 5 or 10,000?
It's hot this afternoon or whatever.
There is as much mental aspect to performing at the highest level of anything than I think people really appreciate. And until you get there, you won't really fully understand what that feels like. So hand loading, for me going on a hunt or for going to a match, a lot of it is just simply the mental edge. I know this is perfect because I made it the way I make it, and there's something that feels good about that as well.
Absolutely,
yeah.
The confidence it gives you.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The end at the end of it all, testing and validating and having a firm understanding of what your stuff's doing. Right.
Yep.
Like if you knowing the bounds of what it's going to do. And making sure that fits within what you're trying to hit.
Yeah, your expectations.
Right, yeah.
I also think we should touch on, Miles touched on it briefly earlier, and I think it's very valid. Once you take virgin brass and you fire it one time and then you size it, your load that you loaded in your virgin brass may not be the same as in the sized cases because you're going to gain some velocity. Maybe it'll work just fine.
Yeah.
In my case, I almost always drop 2, 3, 4 tenths out of my
Starting load.
starting load with my fired cases to maintain about the same velocity level. That's how I manage that. So
Okay.
make sure our listeners know that,
Yeah.
hey, once you get your batch of fired cases, just check your stuff. Maybe you drop a couple tenths out and then just go check it and make sure you're
Yeah.
still, in your window that you want to be in.
Yep. One last question before we round this thing out. There's a bunch of presses on the market. Obviously, Hornady's got a bunch of presses. What press are you guys loading on?
Single stage classic press.
Single stage classic.
Yep. I like that press.
Times 3, 4, everybody in this room.
I have used the other one, like the iron press. It's a great press,
Yep.
but we have single stage presses set up all over, and
They work.
They work.
Yeah.
They work really good.
There's some down in the lab. I bet they've got several million strokes of the handle on them.
Seth, I would even hate to guess. I mean, we've rebuilt some of those and we're still using them. So
Yeah.
I would hate to guess how many
We
rounds are on some
wore
of
out
those.
shell holders on them. So.
Yeah. That's saying something. That's tool steel.
Yeah.
So, the classic single stage press. I will throw one last thing in here about presses. We're talking about plate matches, right? We're not talking bench rest, especially short range bench rest. We're not talking F class. Man behind the camera here, one Preston Lempfer, he's been known to load match ammo on the progressive press. I have shot, because we shoot the same load in our 6-arc, I've shot ammo loaded on the AP, full progressive too, not, single staging or whatever, full progressive, pounds, not holes. And so for these plate matches, there is an application where your AP press might be good enough.
Again, 400 to 600 yards.
Yeah.
On, let's just say, one-day matches with more generous plates.
I would say we have an adapter that goes in place of your powder measure. So you can throw your powder measure, set up 2 or 3 auto charges, which is what Preston does. So he's measuring powder to the 10th.
Oh, well then, yeah.
Bottom of the handle, throws the powder in. Next station, bottom of the stroke, handle it. So it works really smooth that way. You get a really good powder charge, and you can walk that ammo out of there.
But there's
in a hurry.
nothing wrong with that machine because it's the same die, same alignment sleeve,
Yep.
everything. You're just doing it faster. So.
Yep. Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you walking us through your individual loading method. I learned a few things that I'm going to introduce into how I load. I'm still not going to be at the top of the podium like you guys, but I feel like the hefty majority of precision rifle competitors are the guys like me. We're passionate about it. We're spending money here. We're competent, but that middle of the pack is hard to get out of. But it's things like this that we can just get incrementally better. If we can just pull 1 or 2 things out from learning. By the time you stack it all together, you're going to become a better shooter. And the last thing before we close this out that I know you guys do, that I want to stress to the listener, outside of all your load development and whatever, before you go to that match, you make sure every piece of gear that you're taking, the rifle system, your dope, is so dialed in that the only reason you're missing targets is a bad wind call. And I don't know how many times we've all seen it. You show up to the match, oh yeah, my stuff's good. Yeah, it's good. And then you see somebody where the wheels fall off because it wasn't good. They're trying to shoot tripod rear and they've never practiced it. They're trying to shoot tripod rear and their tripod leg is broken. They're trying to fudge their 0 because they're not hitting what they're aiming at. They're off by 2 or 3 tenths. Just do yourself a favor, dial your stuff in, fiddle string tight, so when you get there, there's no excuses.
You cannot question your gear and your trajectory and your program. You can't do it. You have enough other stuff to worry about. You got to be.
If you're going to a 2-day championship match, take both days of ammo.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
Sage advice.
Sage advice. Awesome, guys. Well, let's get back to it. We've got some fun stuff to do in the shop today. It's for the listener, it's a Friday. And generally, if you're going to work on, some project that you've been waiting on all week, Friday's the day to do it. So I know we've got a bunch of stuff in the hopper today. I appreciate you coming on, appreciate your insight, and good luck the rest of the season. Like I said, we're building up to hit that power curve of when you guys are really going to be competing at the national level. Listeners, if you see these guys or anybody else representing Hornady at the matches, we love the interaction. We love the feedback. We love to know what you're thinking, new product ideas, etc. Especially if you see any executive level management, they want to know that you love the podcast. So let us,
Sure.
put that out there as a little PSA. Guys, anything else?
No, I just shot a match this last weekend in Utah and had that I had brand new people in my squad And I love helping people.
Mhm.
It is. I helped a gal with her Ford off and getting everything, and she went from being a little high. She had some stuff in there not quite right. We got her squared away, and the smile on her face coming off stages, hitting targets.
Ooh.
I was like, you know what? This is what I'm here to do, right?
Yep.
Yes, I'm here to compete, and I'm here to.
Well, you end up
represent-
winning the division, so yeah, you did compete.
I love helping people.
Right
And I know Miles does the same thing. We take time out of our day to, hey, let me help you with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
More than
Yeah.
happy to.
It's no fun being surrounded by 8 different people that are having a miserable day.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, taking a deep dive into how some of our best match shooters here on staff go through their loading process. They were a little bit different. Hopefully you picked up something that'll help make you a better competitor. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.